right, well, I guess I'll get going here. So first and foremost, I'll kind of give you a little bit of a brief overview of myself, just to kind of give you a little bit of context. So my name is Nick Kelch. I am a campus recruiter and university programs coordinator for ESRI. I've been here for just under 5 years. When I say just under 5 years, my 5-year anniversary is actually next month. So 4 years, 11 months, and like some odd days. Um, I, originally got my degree in geography and GIS back in 2010. Worked in geography and GIS for about 6 years or so before I took a random career turn, or random, turn in my career, and found myself in HR. So with that being said, here today I am in HR. I think it's a really great fit for me. The best of my world is I actually get to work with students, which is my favorite part of things. I remember what it was like to be a student and all of the things that I remember all of the things that I was feeling as a student, and I now know what I have now that I can offer to students to essentially help students be more successful in their career. So with that being said, I was asked today to come in and talk to you guys about virtual networking, which seems like a relatively important topic given the state of COVID-19 and how everything has shut down, especially when it comes to getting hired, kind of or building some meaningful connections and going from there. I put together a quick little slideshow here. I'm going to do my best to kind of cover a lot of the topics in here. I see we had a couple more people join in, so long story short, if you're just joining in, what we're going to do is kind of run through a quick presentation, and at the end, if you guys have any questions, we can just kind of go through there. A real brief overview. Again, my name is Nick Kelch. I'm a campus recruiter at ESRI. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. First thing I want to point out is I was going to say earlier, I was like, you know what, I'm going to start my presentation by saying hashtag ESRI experience. My wife goes, you should throw all the students off and say pound ESRI experience, because that's what it was back when I was younger. The hashtag sign was pound. So I had to share that funny little statement with you guys. Bear with me. I like to start things off on a light note. That way you kind of have some fun. So I wanted to start off, honestly, just giving you a little bit of context on ESRI. That way you can kind of understand a little bit who we are, kind of where my background comes into play. And that way you can kind of see, hey, is his experience potentially relevant to the type of, networking that I want to do, and kind of go from there. So I'll make this relatively brief, but all in all, ESRI is the world leader in GIS software development. So we are a software company at our base. However, we do hire a lot of geography students. We've been around since 1969, still privately held, debt-free, which is absolutely fantastic. So in times like this, ESRI is very secure, very stable. We're not planning on, we have no intention of laying anyone off during these times. And in fact, I've heard it time and time again that we are made for, opportunities like this or times like this because we spring into action. The Johns Hopkins map, which I'm sure probably everyone has seen at least once, that is built on ESRI's technology, which I think is really, very cool. As you look on the map here, I just kind of want to point out we have, international distributors all around the world. So, if you're an international student, want to move back home, you have that opportunity. You can work out of our regional offices, research and development centers, or our corporate headquarters is based in Redlands, California, which I'm sure most of y'all are relatively familiar with that particular area, being that it's just down the road. Okay, so that's a little bit about us. If you are infinitely curious to learn more about our opportunities, I'm going to throw my email address up at the end of this presentation, so you're more than welcome to reach out. We can set up a chance to call or set up a chance to connect. I can kind of run through your background and talk to you about your individual situation. But again, I do appreciate you tuning in today just to kind of learn a little bit more about networking. So first and foremost, I personally think that networking is the #1 most important part of getting any job. Whether that be working at ESRI, whether that be working for a city and state government, whether that be working at Microsoft, whether that be working at General Mills. I think networking opens a lot of doors that potentially were not open initially. And I know we're going to focus a little bit more on the virtual side of things, but I don't want to discredit all of the in-person opportunities to network as well. Some of those that I could come up with earlier were, conferences, meetups, local meetups, school. One of the things that I didn't realize when I was in school is just how big of a networking opportunity, school was, connecting with all of my classmates, because now as I look back on it, there's a lot of people that I could use to help me advance my career And I say use in the best way possible, but to open some doors. So school is a great opportunity. Career fairs, ironically, is another fantastic opportunity to network. I could literally spend an entire hour talking on career fairs, being that that's my main focus. But I'll spare it and just leave it with career fairs now. Coincidentally, I'm going to throw out happy hours there. So if you're one of those folks who really enjoys, going out and relaxing a little bit after class. Back in my day, we used to call it Friday after class. And quite honestly, I think it was Thursday, Wednesday, Tuesday, and Monday after class. So across the board, there was a lot of opportunities for networking it there. And of course, there's many, many more opportunities. As far as more on the digital side or the virtual side, you've got social media, which is really ironic. I still use Facebook. I have been told that's not as prevalent as what it was in my day. But I joined a bunch of groups on Facebook, like woodworking and different things that I'm interested in. And I was thinking about that today, and that's a great opportunity for networking because I'm building my connection. And quite honestly, I've met people who are local to me who are into woodworking and some other areas. So, a great opportunity digital there. I'm not a developer, I'm not claiming to be a developer. I can write a mean sentence of HTML code if I can read it off the internet. But with that being said, GitHub is also another really great platform if you are more on the technical side of things. Virtual conferences, many others. Truthfully, there's a significant amount of them. But most importantly, and why we're here today, is ultimately to talk about LinkedIn. As LinkedIn is probably the biggest platform out there for virtual networking and provides you with limitless opportunities. So up front, what I kind of wanted to bring out initially was just determining the goal of the networking that you want to do. And as I was kind of thinking about this, I brought it into 3 different major areas. Do you want to get a job? Do you want to enhance your network? Or do you want to learn about something new? Because every one of these is going to have a different approach for the way you're actually reaching out to an individual person. And so, with those 3 pulled up, I'm actually going to go to the next slide. I'll just kind of work through each individual scenario, kind of give you some examples on what you can do up front to kind of go through that. Ultimately, my 8-slide show, I'm on slide 5 of 8, and I've still got another 25 minutes to cover. But with that being said, I'm going to basically go through each one of these individually and just kind of talk about what I would do. So starting to network. So the first one that I'm going to say, or the first one that I'm going to talk about is getting a job. Okay. So I have used LinkedIn for networking for years and years and years and years and years. And I'll share a little bit of a story. So I'm originally from a small town in Iowa. My dad's a financial advisor and quite honestly knows a lot of people. Through his network alone, I could have gotten a job in my hometown fairly easily. But instead I took a less traditional or less easy path. And I actually chased my now wife up to Minneapolis, in which case I had no friends, I had no family. In fact, I didn't even know anyone. I moved in with my father-in-law. With having met him once, which is definitely a nerve-wracking experience, but moved in with him really quickly and took pretty much the first job that I could find up here. I remember my dad always kind of telling me to step outside of my comfort zone, and I started to put that into action up here. So what I would do as far as looking for a job is I would go onto a company. So first and foremost, I identified probably 10 to 15 companies that I wanted to work for. Now, these can be any company that you want to do, but identify 10 to 15 companies that you truly want to work for. Look at their job search their job search sites and determine, do they have the job that you want to do? Whether that's logistics, whether that's software engineering, whether that's geography, whatever that is. Look for those jobs and look for the job titles, okay? Look for the skills that they're looking for on those particular jobs. And now this has essentially helped you start to build an idea, an action plan of the direction that you want to go. So you've got these 10 companies. The next step in my book is to then set up LinkedIn connection, or essentially search LinkedIn. Reach out and essentially say, okay, you know what, I'm going to search for ESRI as an organization. And I'm going to look through ESRI's posting and I'm going to look for every single person who has the job that I potentially want to do. And that, again, can be anything from logistics. It can be software engineering, geography, GIS. It can be whatever. But look for the people who have that job of what you actually want to do. The reason you're doing this is because you're trying to find someone who can enable you and help you get to where you want to go. Okay. Now, once you start to find these profiles, my next recommendation is to then actually start clicking through those individual profiles to try to get a better understanding of these people. Okay. One of the things you can look at when it comes to LinkedIn is look at the amount of connections someone has. If someone has 46 connections, probability is that they're not as active on LinkedIn is what they could be. If they've got, 500 plus connections, to me, that's a pretty strong indicator that would be a good person to reach out to. So for me, going back to getting a job, I would then send that person a note. So let's just hypothetically say that I'm trying to reach out to someone named Susan, and I'm making this up on the fly. Okay, what I then do is I would then send Susan a message, just a connection request. And in that connection request, I would say, hey, Susan, I'm really interested in becoming a, let's just say an HR professional. Currently right now, I'm getting my degree in HR. I want to work in HR. I see that you currently work in HR, and I would love to learn more about what you did to get to where you are today. Now, the reason that I recommend approaching a conversation from that is because it has low pressure. Okay, think about, and I'm flat out honest. I'm not going to be the person who's going to deceive you or anything like that. I myself probably get 2 connection requests a day. I would say that I can connect with probably less than 5 to 10% of the people who send me a connection request. So that's pretty low numbers. But the people who I don't know, who I tend to connect with, have approached me from a less pressure-based way. And so approaching someone from a how did you get to where you are today standpoint takes all the pressure. Now let's think about this for a second. How is that going to help you? Well, first and foremost, the goal from that conversation, in a pre-COVID-19 world, was to meet that person for coffee. If you couldn't meet them for coffee, then from there, try to set up a phone call, which is your number one choice in a post-COVID-19 world. The third option is to exchange a couple of messages via LinkedIn. But by going in with that approach, you can have a conversation with this person without ever even talking about getting a job at the company. Okay. So going back to Susan, okay, reach out to Susan, say, hey, Susan, I would love to figure out what you did to get to where you are today. Would you be open to connecting? Would you be open to connecting with me? Susan connects. The next step from there, what I then would do is send him another message or send Susan another message in this example and say, hey, Susan, thanks for connecting with me. As I mentioned in my note, I'm, exploring careers in HR. Would love to just understand how you got to where you are today. Would you be open to having a phone call with me? In theory, best case scenario, Susan would say yes. When we have that call, approach it like this, okay? What soft skills did you gain to help you get to where you are today? Okay. What hard skills or what technical skills did you develop to help you get to where you are today? And tell me a little bit about your job. Okay. If you approach a conversation with those 3 questions, number one, you're not talking about, getting a job with their company. So there's no pressure there. Number 2, you're learning all of the soft skills that she has in her current job. So you can highlight those in the interview process, which is going to be remarkably valuable. Going from there, 3, you're getting the hard skills, again, which you can now emphasize in the interview process, as well as bring those out in your actual resume and application. So now you've helped that. And then number 4, you're learning about what she actually does from her job. So you're determining up front, is this a company that I actually want to work for? So again, if we bring this all the way back to the beginning, you've got these 10 to 15 companies. And as you start to build these connections at these companies, you're slowly starting to get a better understanding of, are these companies the actual companies that I want to work for? And if you check off a company because you don't want to work there, no big deal. No pressure, no harm, no foul. You just get to mark it off and continue on your search. Okay. So, when it comes to getting a job, I think that's a great place to start, is to reach out to people who have the job that you want to have. Now, I'm going to quickly finish up that thought and say, once you finish that conversation with Susan, if you determine it is a company that you want to move forward with, the next step in that process would be to then actually submit your application. After you submit your application, then it's as simple as sending Susan a LinkedIn message and saying, hey, Susan, it was absolutely fantastic talking to you. I really enjoyed learning more about the organization. I think it's remarkably valuable, what you guys are doing. I just want to let you know that I applied for this job. Don't tell her to forward your information. I'll just simply let her know. The reason I say it that way is because if Susan didn't have a good conversation or didn't think of it as highly as what you did, then she potentially may not follow up and sabotage your application. And I mean that in the best way possible. If she just doesn't feel you're the best fit, you still got the information that you want, and then you can go from there. But if you did have a great conversation and she felt that was a great conversation mutually, then she's going to follow up on your behalf. And so therefore, you're getting an in within the organization before you even go through the application process. Now, the other side of actually getting a job is reaching out to recruiters. As a recruiter myself, again, I get a lot of these connections. And again, I don't connect with very many people. Now, I will tell you that the majority, I would say 99% of the people who reach out to me and say, hey, Nick, can you look at my resume and pass it on to the relevant people at ESRI? There's too much work affiliated with that. A lot of HR professionals are very busy. We don't have time to go through and just quickly, look at a resume and then move it forward in the process. You would be better off applying online than reaching out to someone on LinkedIn. So my true recommendation is don't just reach out to a recruiter and say, hey, here's my resume. Do you have a fit for me? Tailor that message, make it relevant, make it actually appeal to the recruiter. Take the time to do their research. As a student, I remember reaching out to people with more generic based messages. Being a recruiter now, especially a campus recruiter where I go to career fairs, I can tell within seconds if someone has taken the time to, tailor a resume, tailor a cover letter and all of that before they send it out. And I appreciate every time that someone does that. Use that same mentality when it comes to LinkedIn. You've got, I want to say like 300 characters. Tailor that. Hey, Nick, I was looking at opportunities on ESRI's website, job posting 2019-11384, whatever. I'm making this up on the fly. I think it would be a great opportunity. Would you mind connecting with me so I can learn more about this opportunity? Still up front, if I'm not recruiting for that individual position, I'm probably not going to connect. But if you do happen to find the recruiter who is recruiting for that position, that's a great opportunity or a great way to open the door. Again, another way that you can approach a recruiter is, reaching out and saying, hey, Nick, I'm really interested in working at ESRI. I don't know what my best fit would be within the organization. I've done some research. I would love to connect to learn more about the organization and some of the opportunities so that I know which position is going to align with me. Something like that shows that you've taken the time. It shows that you have the effort to learn more about the actual organization. You can also send an email and attach a resume and say, hey, this is everything that I've accomplished. This is everything that I would like to do. But again, I don't necessarily know what the best fit for that would be. Would you be open to having a conversation or something like that? Now, one of the things that I want to be real with you guys about is when you use LinkedIn or when you use a networking platform like LinkedIn, it is, in my opinion, it does boil down to a numbers game. You're going to reach out to a variety of people who are absolutely fantastic and love to help and love to talk to you. But you're also going to you're going to reach out to a lot of people who, on the flip side, only are connecting with people they have met, only connecting with people who they know. And because of that, you may not get a response, even if you send a connection request. And there's nothing wrong with that. Understand up front that if you're sending out all of these messages, if you're sending out all of these messages, you're going to get responses, but it genuinely does come down to a numbers game, which is why I do recommend reaching out to multiple people within an organization, reaching out to multiple HR professionals, and truly giving that a go. But, at a bottom line, when it does, come to getting a job, what you're truly trying to accomplish is open a line of communication with someone on the team that you're trying to join. Open a line of communication with someone in HR so that you can learn a little bit more about the opportunities perhaps before applying or after applying. Or potentially, opening a door through another means, using LinkedIn. So, I think LinkedIn is probably one of the best, or one of the biggest reasons why I actually got my job here at ESRI. I'll share a quick story. So when I took that first job up here in Minneapolis, I was reaching out to people trying to get a new job, and reached out to, I think it was a total of 5 employees here at ESRI. And I approached them all from the same perspective. Hey, I would love to, figure out where you got or how you got to where you are today. I think or a couple of them I approached from more of a, hey, I'm really, excited to look for opportunities at ESRI. Would you be willing to connect so I can discuss a little bit further? The people who did connect with me were people who were in HR. One of them was our employee branding and engagement specialist, and then the other person who actually connected with me was in business development. I set up a quick call with one of them. I had a call with the other one. I actually, exchanged a couple of messages via LinkedIn. And during my first interview with my manager, he actually said, "So I see that you've talked to so-and-so and so-and-so, about our opportunities here at ESRI. What were you able to find out?" And that's because those people actually followed up and passed my information forward to the right people without me even applying. So, there's a lot of opportunities. There's a lot of opportunities up front for you to connect and to kind of open some doors. And truthfully, I think it's a great way to do that. One quick thing that I do want to mention is if you do have any specific questions, don't just hold them to the end. Throw them in the group chat there. I will answer them at the end, but I don't want you to forget about them. So just go ahead and add them in there and we'll come back to them at a later time. Okay. So going back to the previous slide, another goal for networking is to enhance your network. When it comes to enhancing your network, this is more so a little bit more of a generic type of approach to using LinkedIn. Your goal here is simply to connect with other like-minded professionals in your area. As a campus recruiter myself, I try to connect with other campus recruiters. So in times that we're currently going through, I can reach out to them and essentially say, hey, how are you handling your internship program when it comes to COVID-19? Or what are you doing in this circumstance? Or what are you doing in that circumstance? And so because of that, you have, value in reaching out and trying to expand your network. A good way to approach these type of conversations is more so, hey, I see that you're a campus recruiter. I see you're a software engineer. I see that you're a GIS, professional. I'm always looking to, connect with like-minded professionals so that, we can bounce ideas off of and, try to continue, regularly push the envelope and to make the industry better. Are you open to connecting? Something as simple as that, just kind of upfront say, hey, I just want to connect, in the event that we, get an opportunity to meet, can bounce ideas off each other, something like that. So, upfront, I think more of that expanding your network is a little bit more generic, and probably I'm not going to spend too much time talking about it, but I did just want to bring it up simply because you guys at this point are probably less interested in expanding your network, but it can be valuable once you get that job and you do kind of start to, move through your career because, having that expanded network, you can reach out to other professionals at different organizations that might be able to open some doors for you. Now, the last opportunity that I'm going to briefly, kind of talk about here is going to be, again, going back, is learning about something new. So full disclosure, up until about 2 years ago, I was looking at going back to school for architecture. Getting my degree in geography and GIS, loved architecture, wanted to go back for it. And in fact, ironically, if anyone got their degree in architecture, I have nothing against architecture, but I decided it wasn't for me, more so because of my age more than anything. But what I did was I actually reached out to architects here in Minneapolis. And when I would reach out to them, I would essentially say, hey, I'm looking at going back to school for architecture, and I would love to find out, is this the right field for me? Would you be willing to connect? And I connect with architects from big organizations, small organizations, and again, always tried to go out and meet them in coffee. For coffee, I tried to meet them in person. Again, now is probably a much different time, but in general, trying to do that, I was able to get great insight into the industry. And ultimately, it was those conversations that helped me decide that, architecture wasn't the right direction for me. So, as you start to look at your own individual career, if you find yourself at a crossroads trying to decide, is a master's degree worth it? Should I go get this PhD? Should I change my major? Should I career change into a different area? Networking can be a great opportunity because you're reaching out to people who are in those positions, in those shoes, and they'll be very candid a lot of times to help you understand exactly, the type of industry that you would be getting into, the type of experience that is required, the type of education that's required, and that can really help you shape the direction that you want to go with your career. Funny story about that. When it comes to the architecture, I actually reached out to an organization. It was Gensler. I think that's how you pronounce it. Bear with me if you're an architecture student, it's not pronounced that way. But one of the architects I met there, he actually offered me up an internship without being an architect to be an architectural tech simply by networking. I had 2 cups of coffee with him, or met him twice, and I got an internship offer out of it, assuming that I went back to school, which, I wasn't necessarily expecting that, but the opportunity right there arose, and I was like, this is pretty incredible, from simply just reaching out to different people. So you never know what you're ultimately going to get out of those particular opportunities. Trying to think here. Just quickly checking over my notes here, folks, just to kind of make sure. So another thing that I do want to mention when it comes to networking is, one of the most important things is to make sure that you have your LinkedIn profile built out to be as robust as possible. Okay. When you apply for a job, your resume should be a 1-page snapshot of your most relevant qualifications, unless you're a PhD student, in which case I like to give you 2 so that you can talk about your academic research. But master's and bachelor's should be a 1-page snapshot of your most relevant qualifications. Okay. Your LinkedIn fills in all of those gaps. It provides you with a platform to express who you are as a candidate. Okay. So think of it like this. Okay. Let's say, for example, that I'm an HR professional, when in fact I am. And in college, I decided that, I wanted to go into business. I wanted to go into HR. And in college, I worked at McDonald's all 4 years. Loved working at McDonald's, thought it was great. I, in fact, did not work at McDonald's, but, worked at McDonald's for 4 years. Working at McDonald's does not have a lot of comparable skills as to what you need in HR. And that's okay. Oh boy. My dog just came down. So if he starts getting a little crazy, I apologize up front. And so, with that being said, when I start to look at an opportunity of how does McDonald's benefit me, I'm not going to include that on my resume applying for HR jobs, simply because it isn't relevant. But I would include it on my LinkedIn because it shows that I worked all the way through school, and it shows the type of skills that I had. Now, when you start to put together your LinkedIn profile, you want to word things and make them work for you. So an example of this is working at McDonald's. If you're trying to get a job that's not directly related to, the fast food industry or the food industry, use some of the things that you were able to gather. So an example of that would be, worked in a customer service oriented industry, or, worked under high pressure situations. Don't emphasize the fact that you know how to flip a mean burger, because that's not necessarily relevant to trying to get a job in software engineering. But working under high pressure situations with deadlines is, in fact, very valuable to a lot of organizations. And so you want to use your experience to work for you when it comes to that LinkedIn profile. I will also encourage you on your profile to, put any of your academic projects that you're proud of. If you haven't had the opportunity to have an internship, if you haven't had an opportunity to have any other experience, then list a lot more of your academic projects, because it shows your relevant work experience. So academic projects should go on your LinkedIn. Previous work experience should go on your LinkedIn. Professional affiliations or groups should go on your LinkedIn account. Skills. Look at the skills that you want to highlight and the skills that you want to be recognized for. Put those on there, and then reach out to a couple of friends and say, hey guys, let's all have ourselves an endorsing party here where we pour ourselves some wine and just all go through and, endorse each other on LinkedIn. Wow, that's a super cheesy idea, but hey, you know what? Maybe it'll happen one of these days. But you know what? Endorse each other, help that start to stand out. Include, again, all of your previous experience. Put together a rock solid summary. Now, one thing that I'm going to mention when it comes to a summary is don't pigeonhole yourself into one particular area. Be generic. Be specifically generic. Right? Does that make any sense to anyone? No, I didn't think so. But what I mean by specifically generic is, have an idea, have a goal of what you're wanting to do. So I'll use a software engineer, for example. Talk about the types of technologies that you would like to work with. If you're proficient with, C++ and you want to be a backend or core developer on C++, that's great, grand, and wonderful. And I would indicate it and say, hey, I'm a software engineer, really looking for, backend development opportunities. I am passionate about working with C++, but I love working with other technologies, and I'm always open for a new challenge. You know, if you're interested in my profile, reach out. We'll have a great conversation. You know, add a little bit of context, do a little bit of a brief overview of some of your projects that you're really proud of. You know, include a portfolio if you have the opportunity to of some of your projects that you've done in the past. You know, a way to kind of, you know, show employers what you're capable of. I will tell you up front, when it comes to, you know, getting a job, I will say that most employers are actually going to start off by reading your resume. And then if you have a LinkedIn, you know, link on your resume, we're going to go to your LinkedIn probably close to 100% of the time because we want to see the full picture of you. So take the time to make sure that you are putting together that solid, you know, LinkedIn profile. What does a portfolio? Okay, well, I'm just going to answer that question because it just happens to be remarkably, you know, relevant to what I just said. But what does a portfolio look like? Portfolios, you know, vary greatly. You know, I don't know what everyone's background is, who's on the call right now, but from a I'll use a couple of different examples. You know, from a software engineering standpoint, a portfolio would be just an outline of your projects, you know, some code samples, you know, maybe some different images. You know, if you're a game developer, for example, you know, maybe a game that you wrote. You know, by all means, hopefully you made an upgraded Snake game in one of your classes that you can put on a portfolio. On the flip side of that, if maybe you're more of a business student, you know, maybe on your portfolio, you could talk about a class project where, you know, your project was to, you know, create an organization and then, you know, manage the financials, and you can kind of, you know, show the financials and walk through the project on that. If you're marketing, you know, some of your actual, you know, marketing, you know, campaigns that you've come up with, maybe it's your, you know, graphic design type of stuff. If you're a GIS student, then it's, you know, showing some of the cartographic types of things or the projects that you've worked on. If you are a communication major, then you can kind of talk about, you know, some of the, you know, you can put up some of your journals. You know, you can kind of put up some of your actual, you know, writings. I'm trying to think of some of the other ones. If you have any research, you know, maybe you had an opportunity to research with the professor, include that on your portfolio. Ultimately, when it comes to a portfolio, you know, make sure that it's complete. You know, don't list it on your LinkedIn if it's, you know, if I click on a link and it's not going to work. And full disclosure, I mean, there's so many different platforms out there to build a portfolio on that it doesn't need to be, you know, built from scratch or anything like that, because not everyone's technical, and that's okay. But, you know, it's a portfolio is basically a here is me in a non-formal way. I've seen portfolios as well that also include, you know, hobbies, round you out as a person. You know, hey, I like biking, I like photography, I like, you know, I like baseball, and, you know, I you know, track stats of baseball teams. I mean, you can use a lot of different things, but ultimately what a portfolio does is gives an employer a little bit more of a picture of you as a candidate outside of your LinkedIn. So a good way to look at this is your resume is a one-page snapshot of your most relevant qualifications. Your LinkedIn is the next step, a little bit more in depth, contains a little bit more information, and your portfolio explains everything. If someone wants to go to your portfolio, they're going to get a full, complete picture of that project, start, finish, you know, all of it. And so they can really get an idea of what you were trying to accomplish. Whereas on that resume, it's maybe just a line or two. On your LinkedIn, it's maybe 3 or 4 lines. And then on your portfolio, it's a little bit more in depth. So, you know, I would say that's probably a pretty good overview. But of course, everyone is going to be a little bit different. A good way to kind of get an idea on portfolio is simply to go out there and search for people who have a portfolio and, you know, look at what they've done. Going from there, I'm going to kind of go up with just following up. You know, I already kind of talked about applying and just kind of that process of reaching out to that person that you've networked with and just kind of saying, you know, hey, I applied. But make sure, you know, if it is a company that you're interested in, you feel like you had a good conversation, you know, definitely, you know, follow up, apply, do that very quickly because it can open the doors very quickly for you right up front. Now, the last thing that I'm going to briefly mention is maintaining that relationship. You know, if you reach out and you link or you connect with someone on LinkedIn and you feel like that conversation was great and you feel like that person can be a great, you know, mentor for you in the long term, it's okay to explore a mentor relationship with that particular person. Now, a mentor relationship varies greatly. I actually had a student reach out to me and say, hey, Nick, would you be my mentor? I said, yeah, absolutely. I'm more than happy to help. I love the kid, but he actually told me initially, he's like, I would like to connect with you once a month and talk about my goals once a month. And I said, slow down, cowboy. you are probably not going to achieve the goals that you want within a month. Why don't we make it every 4 to 6 months, because that's more of a normal time frame, especially because it's a large time commitment to try to help someone, through some of their time or harder times. And there were times where, him and I would connect more frequently, and other times where we don't connect much at all. And in fact, I would venture to say that at this point it's probably fallen off. But the last time I talked to him, he was actually looking for a new job. We talked about it, gave him a lot of great, at least I think it was great advice. And I would assume he probably got a new job now, and all is going well. So, it's okay to kind of ask for that mentorship, and to essentially say, hey, can we maintain this relationship? If you don't necessarily feel like mentorship is relevant, but you could see, you wanting to work for that company down the road. So let's just hypothetically say that you want to start your career off at McDonald's. And let's say that you wanted to go into marketing at McDonald's. And I'm making this up on the fly, okay? But you knew marketing at McDonald's was only going to be a 3 to 5 year gig for you. And your long-term goal was to work at marketing at, say, Disney. And you wanted to work at Disney, and that was your long-term career goal. And when you were and you reached out on LinkedIn, and you connected with someone from Disney as a recruiter, you had a conversation with them, and they basically said, hey, Nick, now is not the right time here. We just don't have the right opportunities for you. Why don't you come back? That is someone that may not be the best mentor for you, just given the context of the relationship, but it's someone that you should absolutely keep in touch with. And that's maybe an annual email that just says, hey, Susan, it was great talking to you. We talked about a year ago about opportunities in this particular area. It's an area that I'm still very interested in currently. Right now, I'm working for McDonald's in their marketing department. I'm, enhancing all these skills. And I think this would be a great, way for me to continue, to build my skills to where eventually I can end up there at Disney. Based on where I'm going, do you think I'm, kind of on the right track? Do you have any recommendations? If you're okay, I'd love to just kind of keep in touch annually, just a brief, connect or a brief, LinkedIn message, quick email, something like that. And that keeps that door open. So where 5 years down the road, after you're done with McDonald's and you're looking to go work for Disney, then you now have, this connection that you can ping and say, hey, Susan, I'm ready. Let's have a little bit more of this conversation. And now you've kind of maintained that relationship and gone from there. The last thing I'm going to mention about maintaining that relationship is it's not something that you need to do with every single person. You can have a great conversation with someone, get all of the information that you could possibly dream of out of that person, and you may not have an interest in working for that company based on that conversation. And you can just let it go. And there's nothing wrong with that. There really isn't anything wrong with that. If you had that great conversation and later on, things change, and you really decide that, hey, that's the right type of company for me, you can always drum that back up again. There's nothing wrong with that. So don't feel obligated to maintain a relationship with every single person that you reach out to. It can be, a very active, follow-up, or it can be a very easygoing type of, follow-up. It's entirely up to you and how you, or what you got out of the conversation. So I'm going to kind of leave it at that. Hopefully that was kind of a brief overview with you. That is my contact information there. Full disclosure, I normally don't give out my email address unless you participate and join in with me for an information session. So, that's my actual email address. It's not fake. It's not going to spam your Gmail account. It is real. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to, set up a time to connect. We can talk about your individual background, what you could potentially do to network, or, if ESRI is potentially an employer of choice for you. So, I guess ultimately I appreciate everyone, joining me today, and hopefully that was educational and helpful on networking.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that being said, I do have one other question I'm going to quickly jump into here before I open it up for, questions from everyone. And in fact, if you have a question, just type it in. That way I can just read it and go from there. But I'll kind of dive into questions now, and then at the end, we'll just kind of let it go. So how do you go about asking a person about a person's soft skills in the conversation? Well, I would flat out say, what soft skills do you think are valuable in your current job? I mean, you can be very blunt about it, or you can kind of walk around it. There's a variety of different things that you can do. You can kind of say, hey, I'm really interested in learning, how important communication is within your organization. Can you kind of give me some examples of, how you guys communicate? Is it more web-based, more using Slack or Microsoft Teams or Skype? Or is it more, verbal? Do you guys walk from office to office? And immediately right there, you're getting insight. You can kind of talk a little bit more about trying to think of some of the other soft skills, like problem solving, for example. You can kind of say, how do you guys handle, when a problem comes into play? If it's something that you're not familiar with, do you guys have a standard protocol for that? Or is it a little bit more organic? So you can kind of pick up on those soft skills that you feel you're strongest at, and then try to see if they align with the organization through kind of bringing them out and kind of asking about them in previous experience. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Does that help?
Yeah. Because then that way, I guess like you kind of just cut right to like, even like, oh, is this like a job that's right for me?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Ultimately, end of the day, the whole reason for networking is to potentially, depending on one of those three, but if you're looking at it for getting a job, you're trying to determine, is this the company that I want to work for? And again, one thing I do want to mention on that is, if you connect with one person, don't let that one person be indicative of the entire organization. Talk to 2, 3, 4 other people if you have the opportunity to, because you could be talking to a disgruntled employee who's just simply out there trying to make everyone around them not want to work for that company. Or you could talk to someone who is just over the clouds raving about a company, and that company may not be the best. So be realistic when you go out there, kind of temper their expectations. If you talk to someone who's very straightforward, very moderate, kind of take that, a little bit more seriously than someone who says, oh my God, this company is incredible. It's the greatest company I've ever worked for. And don't discredit that, and don't discredit the disgruntled employee, because he or she is disgruntled for a reason, and he or she is happy for a reason. But bring it in, and just kind of understand that, you're talking to one person who represents an entire organization. What other questions do you guys have? Okay, let me ask this. Was that actually valuable from a networking standpoint?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, that's what I want to hear. I win. If it's valuable and you guys are like, yes, this is exactly what I need to help me start networking, that's great.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about like how much I should fill out my LinkedIn profile, or even thought at all about having a portfolio. Yeah. So that was very helpful.
And the thing about it is, you don't necessarily need a portfolio 100%, but truth be told, in the current times on where you are, you're probably actively looking for a job. If you're a graduating senior, you're probably actively looking for a job. You're probably getting a little bit stressed out, and quite honestly, it's probably been quite a challenge for you at this point. So if you're trying to figure out what you can do to try to help improve your chances of getting hired, portfolio is going to help. A well-built LinkedIn portfolio or a profile is going to help. Updating your resume to make it, stand out is going to help. Like, all of the little things that you do are going to continue to compound into a bigger and bigger, situation where it's going to help you stand out as the right candidate.
And you mentioned tailoring resumes.
Yeah.
So do you just look at what the company, or like, I guess, do you just pick out the experiences or change how you're wording like a certain experience to make it stand out more to the company you're applying for, or for the position?
Yeah. So how do I tailor a resume?
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, Charles, I'll get to your question in just a second. Let me dive into this, and then I'll get right over to you. I don't want you to feel like I forgot about you. Okay. So when it comes to tailoring a resume, okay, the best recommendation that I can have is to look at the organization and to look at the job. Okay. So if I pulled up on my screen right now a job posting at ESRI, what you would see is, at the top, you'd have probably a brief overview of the organization. We all do it. Below that, you would have the responsibilities, and then below that, you would have the qualifications, right? The qualifications. Okay. And then at the bottom, more often than not, it's like EEO, equal opportunity employer, and all of that, more, legal stuff. Okay. What I do is, if I was looking for a job, I would go on and I would look at the responsibilities, because that's what that company is trying to find someone to do. Okay. So I would look at the responsibilities, and as you start to read through those responsibilities, you're going to determine that there's probably 2 or 3 responsibilities that is going to be the bulk of the job that you're actually going to be doing. Okay. So by determining what those 2 or 3 are, then that gives you a guide on the direction that you want to go with your resume, something that you can use to then tailor your resume. Okay. So I'm just curious, Charles and Santiago, what are you guys going to school for?
Both computer science.
Both of you guys are computer science.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So I should have been using computer science references the entire time. But from a computer science standpoint, you know, if you determine and you find out that, hey, an organization is working in an agile methodology, you know, they're working with agile methodology, you know, Scrum, the whole 9 yards on that side of things. They're looking for, you know, this person to work more as a front end, you know, web developer, focusing on skills like JavaScript, HTML5, CSS3, and those are the skills. And then at the bottom, you know, they kind of mentioned a little bit of design work. And then the other portions, you kind of determine that, hey, so the job posting is for a front-end engineer, but you also see on there, you know, experience with SQL Server, experience with C++, technologies that you know aren't going to directly relate to the job that you're applying to, because who in their right mind is really going to be using SQL as a front-end engineer who has, you know, design aspects? Very few people. But instead, they want you to have that exposure, that knowledge to where you can talk to someone about that. So you would then focus and use those 3 bullet points, or the ones that are in the responsibilities, to help you shape that resume to where now you're going to bring out, you know, hey, I have experience with HTML5, I have experience with CSS, I have experience with JavaScript and, you know, 15 different of their frameworks. At this point, this is what I've done. These are the projects that I've had that are directly related to that particular area. Now, as a student, I know that you've got probably the core of your education with one particular language, whether that's, what do you got? Are you Java at Harvey Mudd?
Or we've learned actually, like each class we focus on a different language.
Okay.
And so we've got C++, Java, and Python.
Okay, so you've got that. So if you're applying again for that front-end engineering position, C++ is probably going to be less relevant. So it might be one of those languages that you could potentially leave off of your resume, because again, a resume is a one-page snapshot of your most relevant qualifications. So you would leave C++ off of your resume, include it on your LinkedIn, and now really focus in on bringing on that design side of things, or that front-end, you know, web development side of things. Again, guys, sorry, my dog he's going upstairs now. So with that being said, that's ultimately how you kind of tailor your resume, is looking at what the job is bringing out, and then you're bringing that into your exact resume. I could do an entire, you know, resume clinic myself. Funny story. So when I go out on campus, I do a lot of information sessions on behalf of ESRI, and I usually spend about 45 minutes talking about ESRI, and I spend an hour and a half talking about career advice. Just because to me, it's important for students to get a job in whatever area they want to go to, whether that be ESRI or whatever organization that may be. And so I really value, you know, giving you guys career advice. So I want to try to help it as much as I possibly can. So does that answer your question on how to tailor your resume?
Yeah. But I have a follow-up question now.
Okay.
So in this example, like you said, the like C++ might, or let's say that they had like C++ listed as something like at the bottom or something, like could be helpful to know, and it was just so that you could talk to like the back end.
Then include it.
Yeah, then include. Okay.
Yep, absolutely. You know, you don't want to, whatever is included on that job description, you don't want to pull out. But if the job description doesn't say anything about C++, then in that case, you can pull it out. Basically, again, you want to make that as relevant as possible. So any point that you can get on those experiences or those responsibilities, you want to try to include that on your resume if possible.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to dive into Charles' question. So give me 1 second, and then you can ask me another question.
Mm-hmm.
How often are there job opportunities that are not listed publicly on LinkedIn or other sites? Honestly, Charles, I would say a lot. So when it comes to posting on job sites like Indeed, when it comes to posting on job sites like LinkedIn, companies have to pay to post their postings on there. Okay. So because of that, a lot of smaller organizations don't necessarily have the capital available to go out and post to that. So, so because of that, there are going to be, you've got a significant amount of opportunities that are posted on job sites, and then you have a significant amount of opportunities that are not posted on job sites. So any job search should include going and researching actual organizations that you want to work for. Any job search should include organizations that are on Indeed, that are on LinkedIn, as well as organizations that don't. So it's going directly to their webpage, trying to find that careers portion of it. So you're going to see both. And another portion or another thing that you could use to help you find organizations is if you go on LinkedIn, you can search people by the skill. So, you know, for you guys, for example, if you're both C++ developers, and generalizing 100%, as you guys could probably tell. But let's say that you're both C++ developers and that's the direction you want to go. And if you are C++ developers and that's the direction you want to go, reach out to me. We can talk about ESRI opportunities because our core software is built on C++. At any rate, shameless pitch, don't leave. Bear with me. But at any rate, let's say that you're both C++ developers and you're trying to find companies that really use a lot of C++. You can actually search out people who use C++ on LinkedIn. And then you can, almost reverse engineer. Thanks. Sit down. You can reverse engineer and search that, basically meaning you're looking for people and then looking through their background and looking at the companies that they have worked for. And by doing that, it's going to help you learn of companies that you may not have known about upfront that can potentially open the doors, and then you just have to go find the careers that are available there. So you've got two different sides of a career search. You can use the actual tools and job search opportunities within LinkedIn, or you can also use on the flip side of that, looking for people who have the skills that you could potentially want to use in your own career. Does that help, Charles?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Awesome. Any other questions?
So we might get cut off just because we're on that hour for the Zoom meeting. So we only have 3 minutes. So if anybody has questions or if you want to follow up with Nick.
Absolutely. Well, since we've only got 2 minutes now is what I'm showing, I will go ahead and let you guys, let you off the hook. Seriously though, I really actually appreciate you guys tuning in today. You had an hour of your time that you could have done anything else except for listen to me, but you chose to sit here and listen to me. So hopefully the information that I provided was relevant. I hope that helps you guys get a job, whether that's with ESRI or whatever organizations you guys are pursuing right now. Seriously, I wish you the best of luck and whatever you've got going on. And if you have any questions, seriously, don't hesitate to reach out.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you from our office. Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Absolutely.
Bye.
We'll see you guys.
Bye.
See ya.